Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Lifeboat Live with me, absolutely Arian. And I am so excited to be back for yet another season. Listen, it's been a while. We've been on hiatus since the summer, and I'm so glad to be here and back, refreshed, rested, and ready to share some more life lessons that I've been able to learn in this ongoing season of life. So, listen, I don't, whoever is now in the room, if you're watching on Facebook Live or if you're watching on YouTube, please let yourself be known. I would love to greet you. Hey, Ashley. Yes, thank you for welcoming me back. I'm so glad that you are here. Listen, I it's been a while, and I got to get my little floaties on myself and kind of get back in the groove of things. But listen, I would don't want to keep us too long tonight because it is a work night. So what I want to first start off by saying is, please, as you come in, just introduce yourself. Let me know who you are, where you're watching from, and also please don't forget to hit share, send up some likes, and if you are watching on YouTube, make sure that you are liking also and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Please feel free to comment, to talk back to me, ask me some questions along the way, engage, just whatever. Like, I'm here for it. We are having a conversation tonight. So if you're watching on the replay, this means that we are no longer live, but you can always leave your comments and I will come back to you. I will come back and look at the comments, and I always engage with whatever's left, even after the live. So let's get into it. Tonight we are talking about vulnerability, okay? And why it can sometimes be scary. So most people have heard of Professor and author Brene Brown. She kind of went viral for speaking about vulnerability, and she says, or she suggests rather, that vulnerability is an important measure of courage, right? And that it's always people, I should say, it allows people to be seen, understood by the people who are important to them in their lives, and to be understood, right? And to be accepted. So being vulnerable also serves as an important way to foster authenticity, belongingness, and love. And she writes about that in her book called Daring Greatly, how the courage to be vulnerable transforms the way we live, love, parent, and lead. So I've only read like certain excerpts from the book, but my friend Ashley actually has talked about that book extensively and how she has a whole chapter on vulnerability, and has shared some of the things. I've watched her TED Talks and her uh, Netflix specials, and she is quite profound on those five things that she mentioned: the courage, vulnerability, living loving parent, and being able to lead, and parenthood, and all that stuff. She talks about all that stuff pretty candidly, and I hope to one day, be able to. Uh, be as vulnerable as she has been able to become through her work, her research, and her own therapeutic journey. Thank you for welcoming me back. Welcome back. I'd love to welcome you back, Pastor Hopeton Morris, for being on the live here with me tonight. Always a great support. Thank you. So, I want to talk about a little bit about our journey, my journey through vulnerability. So, there was a time in my life that, vulnerability definitely was a struggle. But before we get into that, let's just talk about the foundation of it and how most of us as children, we were very courageous. And we didn't really struggle with being vulnerable. Matter of fact, we found it probably easy to be vulnerable. We said what we thought, we cried whenever we wanted to, anywhere we wanted to. We laughed, we danced spontaneously. We were unapologetically ourselves in our childhood at some point, right? In our childhoods, I should say. Most adults that struggle with vulnerability have learned at some point in their formative years that being vulnerable in front of people came with shame, ridicule, or a betrayal of some sort. So this may have been taught to us through, hard times in our lives where, you know, we needed to, and we learned that we needed to protect ourselves by building walls around our authentic thoughts and our authentic feelings and our personalities due to the fear of the shame, the ridicule, and the betrayal that we may have experienced at some point in our lives. Now, some of us even have internalized that ridicule and those harsh criticisms and the shame, and became afraid to be ourselves because we ourselves believe that there's something abnormal about who we are. And this is why words are so powerful. And when they say, like, sometimes children can be so cruel because we don't understand that what we experience as young, formative people, as our personalities are being formed and we're brave and we're courageous and able to be ourselves, there comes sometimes an event or a person of influence in our lives who may have be struggling with something in those same areas that kind of breaks it down either consciously or unconsciously, right? Tamara, thank you for joining. Nice to see you. First Lady, how are you? Thank you. Thank you for joining. Hey, Gladys. Good to see you too. I hope you guys are liking and sharing because I'm about to get into it right now. On the Lifeboat, I always share life lessons, things I've learned along life's journey. And I could not talk about vulnerability without being vulnerable myself, right? Listen, and vulnerability hasn't always been something that's been easy for me either. So yeah, I too have had a journey with vulnerability. There was a time in my life that vulnerability was something that I struggled greatly with. Um, a lot of us from my generation and even older grew up hearing expressions like "big girls don't cry" or "suck it up, buttercup," right? Or just having our feelings minimized because it was seen as weak or less than to express our emotions. Um, and so those things became shameful for us. I know that some of us even claim to be introverted or reserved, but really we are acting out of a place of fear and the lack or the fear of being vulnerable. So, for me, my journey, what that looked like for me was that I typically evaluate every environment I go into. Um, I was one of those, or I'm still one of those who claim to be introverted and reserved, but I do believe that there was a time in my life, and when I think back on my childhood, that I was not always, it wasn't always so. Um, I think there was a moment, right, that happened, and it's funny because I was thinking about it not too long ago, um, because I became a person that was unable to share how I felt. I didn't cry. The only hard emotions that I knew how to express were anger. Everything else was held deeply inside. It was held back. It was guarded. um, I remember a very impactful moment when I was being bullied at school as a young child. And I told an influential adult in my life about it. I was holding my sadness in for a long time, but that day it had become overwhelming. And as I left the school premises and I left that environment, I was amongst my safety net, or what I thought to be my safety net. I remember speaking to an adult of influence in my life at the time, um, and I remember, as soon as I got into their presence, I bursted into tears, um, and started expressing what happened to me that day. And I remember saying, they don't want to be my friend. And I was met with a very harsh response of, why are you crying about that? If they don't like you, who cares? That's nothing to cry about, right? um, and and as an adult, as a critical thinker, as someone who can empathize and view other people's point of views and see how where people are coming from, I could understand that that person meant well, but they were also enforcing unhealthy coping mechanisms, which was brush it under the table. We strengthen up, we get strong, and we don't acknowledge our feelings because they are not supposed to define how we feel. But that is not the way to go about it, right? What that did for me in that moment uh, was that I remember that I experienced a great amount of shame. There was an immense amount of shame that came over me in that moment. I remembered wiping my tears and sucking in that weeping sound and hiding it. And I remember just becoming numb in that moment. And what I learned in that very moment was that it was not only unsafe for me to show sadness, but it wasn't safe for me to share it either. I'll say it again. What I learned in that moment of tough love was that I was not able to it wasn't a safe place to show that I was sad, and also that it wasn't a safe place to share that I was sad either. It took years before I realized how unhealthy this was. Matter of fact, the first time I got my heart broken in a dating situation, it was very bittersweet for me, right? It was very bittersweet for me. Yep. Um, and the reason why it was so bittersweet was because um, I so I realized in that moment that like something that it was very very profound and almost um, I mean I don't know if it was it's very duplicitous in its nature, but I realized that when my heart got broken that I was very much able to be vulnerable, right? I was heartbroken because I was vulnerable and someone hurt me. Um, but I also was at the same time in that heartbrokenness incredibly happy because a large part of me thought that I wasn't even able to feel and be vulnerable. So it was such a very odd multi you know multifaceted reaction and emotion to feel sadness and gladness at the same time because I realized that something has shifted and broken in me. I was able to feel, which made me incredibly sad, but also I was happy because oh my gosh, I'm able to feel and be sad and emote and to feel it and to express it, which had something that I had locked off in me for a long time. And I hadn't realized that. And it was to the point that I had become so prolific at, or proficient rather, at masking how I felt that I didn't even know how to unlock it and feel. So now, with that said, without sounding like a whole like a sociopath, it's not that I didn't feel, I just didn't know how to show it. So I have come a mighty long way since then. The core of me is, not always the easiest to access, but once that, those barriers do come down at some point when I do feel safe. Now, people who know me, people who are around me enough, people who I'm close to, people who I trust know me. Those barriers do come down and they see a different side of me, a soft side to me, um, a vulnerable side. I'm able to be that way. Matter of fact, I'm much better at emoting and showing how I feel and being, expressive in that way, not only vocally but with my actions. But it became it was a journey through just maturity. It came through life lessons, like heartbreaks. It came through just the necessity to have the human experience that I wanted to have, and also therapy, um, reading, having different life experiences, learning from other people around me who had the capacity of vulnerability that I didn't have and I admired. So why why is there such a struggle with these things, or why do people tend to struggle with vulnerability? Well, according to Professor Brown, we struggle with shame, fear, and the struggle of worthiness when we are struggling with vulnerability. Shame is a part of a great reason why we struggle with vulnerability. Fear and the struggle of worthiness. So one way to kind of reduce this fear of vulnerability is to just really embrace your authentic self, right? You've been hurt before, so a lot of us try to minimize the risk of being hurt by trying to control situations, trying to build barriers around, and trying to predict what may happen and avoid said situations, of getting hurt again, or whatever. And so we dumb down who we are. We water it down, and we create sometimes even another persona, just so that we won't get hurt, right? And people won't actually see the real us. But the fact is, to combat the fear and vulnerability, you must first learn to love and accept yourself wholeheartedly, your authentic self. And loving yourself is one of the toughest lessons you have to learn, and you have to come face to face with, because you're also not just accepting the fact that that all the good things about you, but you have to also overcome and understand that you are flawed, that there are imperfections, that you have embarrassing stories, that you've made mistakes, that you've done things that you wish you could forget and take back. But the fact of the matter is that people are people. You are human, and we all are having this human experience, right? Um, People are insecure. People are awkward. We all are having these insecurities, as a human nature is, of who we are, and we're all trying to strive to become, or most of us anyhow, are striving to become better and stronger. But the trick to it is realizing that everyone feels this way. Like, you are not the only person with insecurities. You're not the only person who doesn't feel strong. You're not the only person who doesn't feel, that they can overcome some things. Like, we all have places where we have weaknesses, right? But you have to just accept that. Um, and what other ways to improve your ability to accept yourself is really to just treat yourself the same way that you would treat one of your friends or loved ones. We all have friends and loved ones, right, that have flaws and that have um, insecurities and whatever they may be, but yet we show them empathy, we show them compassion, we love on them, although that they have shortcomings. So then why then should you not love and show yourself the same empathy and compassion that you show others in the same situation, right? Why are you not worthy of the same compassion and empathy that you give to the people who are around you and who you love and appreciate? It's important to be kind to yourself. Um, this is going to be short and sweet. So I don't know if you're in here now, but please go ahead and like, share. Make sure to, if you're on YouTube, to subscribe to my channel. Hit those like buttons as well. Talk back to me if you're enjoying this right now. Put some thumbs up in the comments. Let me know that you're enjoying this. So, and also don't be afraid to also let me know your vulnerability journey, what that has looked like for you. You still struggling with that? Let me know. I'd love to know and engage with you in the comments. So I want to get into some of the reasons why, not why, but specifically what we need to do to be able to improve how we see ourselves and to be able to be more vulnerable in our daily lives with the people who are around us. So you have to acknowledge that you are also important, right? Um, the fact of the matter is that everybody has a purpose in this world. Everybody is here for a reason. Everyone has giftings. Everyone has something to contribute to the world moving forward, right? Whether it be just you touching your local community, whether you be touching the people in your school, at your job, at your church, at your local whatever, you have you are here to impact somebody. You may not be impacting millions of people. Right now, there are 6 people watching and are being impacted in some way. I don't have thousands and thousands of followers, but you know, if the Lord decides to increase, well, amen. And if He doesn't, well, amen. But I am here for a purpose to share life lessons with that I have learned along life's journey to encourage other people who are going through it to persevere and to keep going because there's if I've overcome then there's a possibility for them to overcome, and also to allow people to know who have overcome or who are going through it that they're not alone, that there are other people in this life journey who are experiencing different hardships and going through things and are pushing through them and getting through them too. So you are important. What you bring to this world is important, so be yourself. um you also have to learn how to embrace your mistakes. Not only do your mistakes make you human, but they give you a wealth of experiences to grow on and help others with. Hence the lifeboat. So it's not just, it's not just you have to create a lifeboat, but hey, we overcome by the blood of the lamb and the word of our testimony. And the way that we overcome by the word of our testimony is by going through things and overcoming them, right? And then not only just going through things and overcoming them, but also being able to declare them from a place of restoration, right? From a place of knowledge, a place of growth, a place of wisdom. That is why the testimony is important. It's not just the what you've been through; it's about how you've overcome, and then not how you've overcome, but also how you speak and give that word out to encourage someone else. Um, Another thing that we need to stop doing is trying to prove our value, right? When you have a fear of vulnerability, a lot of the times, what you're trying to do is show people without having to show them really that you are worthy, right? You're worried about what they think, if they're going to like you, this and that. And you feel like you have to earn your keep by parading your talents, parading your, this bigger than life personality so that people stop and care about us. And invariably that may get us to a place of unconsciously asking for people to love us, um, when you don't need to do that. There are people that are interested in you because of who you are, not because of what you bring to the table, not because of the Louis, Gucci, whatever that you have on. They're not interested in the big job titles that you have. They're not interested in how much money you have, what latest running shoes you have. They are interested in who you are. And if you are not able to be vulnerable and show that, then how are they going to value that? Be you. Because the best thing is the best feeling in the world is when you can be yourself and find out that you can still be loved. But you will never be able to find that out if you're never vulnerable and yourself. Because if you're continually living in a charade of pretense, then you are losing in the end, because people are not even loving you for you. They're loving you for the charade. So it's important to stop trying to prove your value, but just be you. Um, and the lastly, because this is a short one, remember that you can't be everything to everyone, right? Not everybody is gonna like you. Not everybody is gonna be able to relate to you. Not everybody's gonna want what you are selling. But that doesn't mean that you should stop performing and being kind and doing things for people. Uh, but do things for people based in love and authenticity rather than fear of self-judgment and rejection. If you are doing things out of uh, if you are doing charitable and generous and being generous based on a fear of being not loved, well, you're doing you're doing yourself a disservice because you're living in constant anxiety of being rejected. People come and people will go, but the people who are for you are for you. And so if you have to buy their love, they're not for you. Move from a genuine place. It's important not only for everyone around you, but mostly for you, for your own mental health and for your own well-being, your wellness. Um, there's no better feeling than knowing that you are seen. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be understood. Everybody needs community. No man is an island. So, in order for us to have that and have that authentically, that needs to come with vulnerability. Um, and so, with that said, if you have any questions, now would be a great time to come forth with them um, before I close. But yeah, vulnerability, man, that is something that, listen, although I've come a mighty long way, it's something that I am still developing um, and growing in because fear does come over me, uh, especially when I don't feel like I know or I have control of the next step. When I feel like my fate is in someone else's hands, it gives me it still to this day gives me anxiety, and it's something that I have to work through and work on, um, like most of us. But I'm working through it because I've seen the fruit of vulnerability also not just always being a negative thing or being a hurt thing, getting hurt through it, but I've seen it I've seen it develop and be fruitful in really authentic and beautiful relationships and friendships as well. So Ashley has a question. Let's see. She says, "Has vulnerability ever backfired for you, girl?" Of course. In this world, there are going to be people who are advantageous. There are going to be people who try to get close to you or take advantage of your weaknesses to capitalize on them in whichever way is they do. But with that said, that does not speak to who you are, right? But it speaks to the brokenness in them. So did it really backfire? Yeah, okay. You got your feelings hurt. I got my feelings hurt. But what it really does show, like what I shared in my story earlier of my first heartbreak, there was a level of there was a duplicitous experience going on. It was very there was a duality to it because I felt really sad because I was vulnerable and heartbroken. But I also was glad because I realized that I was able to be vulnerable. And so, what that meant for me was that I had unlocked something in me. I was able to be authentic. I was able to be genuine. I was able to be pure with my feelings, um, with my behavior, with my actions. I was pure, and that is not something to be ashamed of. Although it backfired, it wasn't something to be ashamed of because purity is beautiful. Matter of fact, if we're going to go Bible, the Bible says that we should be like children, right? because there's an innocence, there's a purity, there's a vulnerability to children. That's why when we are like children, we can worship, even we can worship in spirit and in truth, because we don't have all these barriers and these insecurities and these who's watching me, who's not watching me, what do I look like, what do I sound like, what do I nothing. um Today I was walking in the hallway, and in the mall next to my workplace, and I watched this child um, spinning around. He was walking with his mother, this little boy, and he was spinning around and dragging his feet, and he just was enjoying the sound of his feet dragging on the floor. And I thought to myself, how annoying is that, right? But he was having fun. He was enjoying it. He loved the sound of his feet against the floor, his shoes squeaking. He was just enjoying that moment. He wasn't worried about what I looked back at him a couple of times, like there was no way I was walking with my mom and dragging my feet and not getting popped. However, his mother was allowing him to do what he wanted to do, and he was enjoying that moment. And it didn't matter how many times I looked back at him, he didn't stop, because he was enjoying himself and doing what he was doing. He was being authentic, right? Whereas, you know, a lot of us have grown into adults who are afraid to drag, or not, not even drag our feet, but to dance in the middle of the street, because it might look undignified, and it might look, you know, crazy, and it might look, you know, it might be embarrassing because of what people want to say or think. But we ought to be like little children in some ways, in many ways, and be vulnerable. And it can't backfire on us when it's authentic. So yeah, that's what I'd say about that. Hopefully I answered your question. Any more questions before we go ahead and close? Huh? I've had my three hoops, my 3 points in a hoop. Not the hoop yet, but I guess not. I don't know if I can see the YouTube comments, but I can see all the Facebook ones. So, with that said, it's been awesome seeing you guys again. Thank you for joining the Lifeboat Live. We are back. Oh, I got to change that. I just realized the top of it says 9 p.m. Nope, we have a new time. We are now every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, where I am on here sharing another life lesson that I have learned along life's journey. Now, next week, I have a special guest on, and I cannot wait for you to hear from them. This person is someone who I really admire, always has amazing revelation and wisdom to share. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for that next week, sorry, Thursday. We will be back again. So thank you for all who have been here tonight with me. Make sure that you make sure that you subscribe if you're on YouTube. Make sure that you share this, hit the share button, share it with someone who needs it. And until then, we will meet again next week, same time, same place. Have a great night.